I'm joined now by New Democrat from Quebec, Matthew Dubé. Good to see you. And Randy Boissonnault, Liberal MP for Edmonton Centre, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Heritage. I believe we're in your riding.
We are. Welcome.
Here at the Convention Centre. Thanks for having all of us. Let me start with you, Randy. Let's talk a little bit about what we've been hearing in a number of our panel discussions here, because what's come back to us in a lot of the conversation is what happened to the Democratic vote in the last election and how they got outflanked by the Liberals. And a number of New Democrats are saying that Liberals are painting themselves as progressives and did in the campaign as a tactic, and that eventually people will see through that. What's your response to that?
Well, Peter, it's pretty clear that during the election, Canadians chose our option. And as a candidate, and I campaigned 2 years to become the candidate, the mandate and the message that we were sharing as a party was a progressive message. And as opposed to a tactic, it's actually where the core of the party is now is when you see what we're talking about in terms of investments in the middle class, investments in infrastructure, really getting back to our progressive roots, both domestically and internationally. So I think it's fundamental to who we are as a party. And I've spoken with New Democratic candidates at the federal level who didn't make it into office this time, and they have told me, look, you were the bolder party. You actually gave Canadians a bold option. You talk about investing in the economy in a significant way, and that's the results that we saw on October 19th.
A lot of delegates are part of this convention, Matthew, as you know, is about deciding Tom Mulcair's future as the leader, and I know that you're an MP that supports him, as I understand, and colleagues in Quebec do as well. But there's lots of talk here about what went wrong, and we're going to hear some more about that tonight here at the election. Did you get outflanked by the Liberals? Is that what happened here? Or did you guys mishandle a campaign?
I think we could say we got outflanked, but the key I would pick up in my colleagues' comments is the progressive message, and now we're hoping to see progressive results, and that's the role we feel we need to play in Parliament this time around, is to make sure that a lot of those commitments are kept, that there's no waffling on that, and to be that strong progressive voice. That's part of what we're doing here. I think we've already shared that conclusion. We were definitely perhaps too cautious, a bit too much of a front-runners campaign. That's one of the conclusions that's already been shared, and that I agree with, and many of my colleagues do as well. And that's, I think, I think part of what we're doing here is reminding ourselves we don't need to be afraid of who we are. And I think Tom Mulcair is the first person to admit that, and that's the work that he's been trying to do in the last few months. That's why I support him, and that's why I think this is great, wholesome debate, and it's always fun to be at convention.
Yeah, let me ask about this idea. Let's talk about leadership. One of the things, as I mentioned, Tom Mulcair, and one of the things I'm hearing from some delegates is there's also something about there's a generational conversation taking place. Is Tom Mulcair the right guy to carry forward when his main opponent is a Justin Trudeau, generationally younger? What's the answer to that?
Well, I think what young people look for, I mean, and even people my age, is the ideas. It's not just the age of the leader. They're not just looking for someone who's the same age as them. They're looking at someone who's willing to listen to them, respect them, and also be willing to share their ideas and their values. And that's something that I find Tom has always been good at, and perhaps it didn't come across quite as much as we would have liked in the last election. That's definitely something that needs to be worked on, and that's where we come into strategy, communications, and all those discussions. But that's something that's come out in this convention even, is that let's have young people be a part of the solution that we want to, and the progressive solutions that we want to bring forward to Canadians.
What are your views on that, Randy?
Well, from my experience in the Liberal Party, because I'm going to leave New Democratic delegates to make the decision on leadership moving forward, but I know in my own decision to become a candidate and then to run in the election, leadership was an important factor. Now, I made the decision about a year after Mr. Trudeau was chosen as the leader, and it was a very important thing. I mean, here in Edmonton, we have a very young city, in fact, the youngest city in the country, and in 2011, we elected a very young mayor, in Mayor Don Iveson at 34. And so to have a leader of our party, I'm 45, and Mr. Trudeau's 1 year younger than me, there is a shift taking place, and I know it was some of the energy that was brought into our campaign, and it resonated with people across the spectrum to have that energy and that dynamism. So I think it does matter. Leadership matters. So does the team, and so does the plan.
But the ideas are big, right? I mean, the New Democrats here, a lot of them are talking about the Bernie Sanders effect. Bernie Sanders is not a young man, but he's connected with a lot of young people, to your point on the ideas issue.
That's the thing. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely, and I think, regardless of what happens in the U.S. presidential race, the fact of the matter is he has connected with people, and I think that's a great example of exactly the point I was trying to make, is that at the end of the day, as long as you have a leader that's willing to listen and willing to share those values and ideas with young people, that's something important. And I think the team does matter, because if I look in 2011, we had a lot of young MPs that got elected, and there's a bit of trailblazing we did there, and there's much more younger MPs in the House now from all parties, and I think that's something that's important as well, and that's the kind of change that we feel as New Democrats we can contribute to. It's not just up to us, it's all parties that need to come together, but it's definitely important that young people will be part of the conversation.
New ideas and taking some risks, that's coming up too. New Democrats here, Randy Boissonnault, are talking about the LEAP manifesto. No new pipelines, leave fossil fuels in the ground. How does that message go over in Alberta?
Well, you can telegraph the answer, not well at all. And what we're looking at, if we talk about our national exports, the largest exports that we have as a country are petroleum products, about $130 billion in the last cycle, and the next largest export is $62 billion worth auto parts. And so that is a huge delta. We're talking almost more than double the size of the auto sector. And so my argument is we have the science, we have the technology, we have the innovation to be able to develop natural resources sustainably. And what our party is doing is really setting the table and working with, not just environmental groups, but setting the table so that any new projects are going to be sustainable from an environmental perspective and good for the economy. And that's what we think is the way forward. So from an Alberta perspective, that part of the LEAP manifesto
doesn't work for you.
Doesn't work.
Okay, last night the Premier of Alberta, Rachel Notley, went on television saying to your government, you need to give us the go. You need to start saying yes to the pipeline and get this stuff moving to Tidewater. What responsibility does your government have in Ottawa to say we are pro-pipeline, we're going to make this happen?
Well, as an Edmonton Centre Member of Parliament, I agree with the Premier's statements. I want to see product to Tidewater. Period. Now, we have to do it in a way that works with First Nations, that works within the whole environmental sustainability of our country and our commitment to COP21. And 10 years of cheerleadership on behalf of Prime Minister Stephen Harper did nothing to get pipelines built. And so what we're taking is an approach that will see a regulatory framework that has the confidence of Canadians, and that's what we're working on. And we know it's important for the Canadian economy. So I sit on the Energy and Environment Caucus as part of our party, and my voice is very strong in that caucus to see this get done.
Matthew, what's your view on the LEAP manifesto? And does that put you at odds with the government of Alberta? If you're a supporter of LEAP, and I should caution, it's coming before it's simply a resolution at this point, comes before the whole convention on Sunday morning. But there are people saying, this is where the party needs to head. It needs to make some important decisions about how to proceed on eliminating fossil fuels, how to compensate workers in the fossil fuel industries that will need help. How do you square that message at this convention on LEAP, if you support it, with the position of the New Democrats in Alberta?
Well, I think I'll start with the second part of the question, just looking at New Democrats in Alberta. I think the Rachel Notley's government should be commended for taking on a tough challenge of trying to diversify the economy. I think everyone recognizes that there's challenges.
At the convention tomorrow,
absolutely. And so there's a challenge there. Diversifying the economy, taking into account climate change, these are all things that need to happen. I think even Albertans agree with that. And it's a challenge that their government is taking on. As far as the LEAP manifesto is concerned and our party's policies, what I've appreciated about a lot of the wording of the different resolutions that have been brought forward is that we're looking at taking the values from that. So not necessarily every single idea is going to be adhered to, but I think there's a sentiment presented in that manifesto that we need to start taking climate change more seriously, that we're not doing it. And I think that's something that the Democrats can get behind, even if we don't agree with the document its entirety. And that's what I think the debate's going to be about. And even some of the resolutions I've seen have looked at the next convention. So let's consult with party members and see where we need to go going forward on, let's face it, which is one of the most urgent issues of our time, and that's climate change.
Okay, so let's finish on where we started. This is really it's kind of like the battle for progressives. Who wins it? Between Liberals and New Democrats, because the election gave us a taste of it. And now you've got a New Democratic Party that's trying to find its way back to a lot of the policies his government's moving on.
I'll go out on a limb and maybe put partisanship aside for a minute and say that I hope Canadians win from this kind of debate. I think at the end of the day, the Liberals have promised a lot. We want to hold them accountable for those promises. We want to do more to reduce income inequality and to help people need it and to tackle climate change. So at the end of the day, yes, we all hope to win the next election, but if Canadians can win out on these debates, then I hope that's the result that we get.
Randy Boissonnault, I'll give the final word to you.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment, putting partisanship aside, I do think Canadians won on October 20th, and that there are opportunities, and Matthew said this, we fully expect the New Democrats to hold our feet to the fire on progressive policies and seeing those results. But as an Edmonton Centre MP who ran on the platform, I want to see results as well. So I think it's a new era in Canadian politics, and I think it's time for progressives from coast to coast to coast to really see change for our country, and I'm very excited to work with my colleagues across the aisle in all parties to see this happen.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you.